Okay, you can probably see we have a channel selector board and a switch here on the bench. This is for a Tram D201A that was sent to me to be restored. I don't know if this one's good or not, so if you've ever seen any videos of mine on the trams, I've mentioned it before, and I know a lot of other people have talked about it in posts and on other videos. But in the D201As, this is a 40-channel version of the Tram D201. The early versions had this, a black channel selector. The later versions had one that was gray in color. Now, this one was an absolute disaster. Had horrible problems with them. They were so bad that they were going bad while radios were still in the warranty period. And they eventually came out with the gray channel selector to replace it. And they could, back in the day, when they were still available, they'd take the gray channel selectors, and there was a modification to, they'd actually have to cut some of the circuit traces and add some jumpers. But they'd do a conversion to convert your board over to use the gray channel selector. But in any case, if you have a radio that has a black channel selector, and it still works, do yourself a favor. Don't use it until you've done what I'm going to do to this one. It was a bad design, and you'll see once I get this apart. It's basically normal wafer-style switches, little contact fingers, but what they used for the contact material, the part that actually rotates, it's basically just a piece of circuit board, and you'll see it with the copper traces on it, but it wears out very easily. You can greatly extend the life of these, because the main problem is friction. That copper trace wears out, and it'll end up cutting those traces, and then the switch, those little wafers off all of these little solder connections here no longer make contact. So what you can do is, luckily these black switches, as you can see, there are 2 screws. So you can take these apart. So what you do is, and I'll show the insides, take it apart, as long as it's still working, it's still good. Take it apart, clean it, and then lubricate it. Matter of fact, let me reach up here and get it. What I use, you can get the Shield Deoxit. This is the Shield. Now, the normal solution you have in the spray is S5, okay, because it has 5% solute, the actual Shield in there. The rest of it's all basically propellant. But if you get these little nail polish bottles, you see this is the S100. It's 100% solution in here, and it's not only is it a metal protectant, it's also a lubricant. So, once you get it apart, get everything cleaned up, you actually go in there, and then you can basically paint some of this. It's kind of like oil, basically. But you can actually coat those wafers in the wafer contacts to greatly extend the life of this. Because like I say, I think that's the main problem. It's friction is what kills these. So let me get it torn apart so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so you've stuck with me this long. Probably is what you've been waiting for. This is what's inside of the switch, okay? Now, like I say, it's not so much that the fingers are the problem. Actually, they do. I've actually seen those wear out as well, because they are rather thin, okay? But all these fingers look good. There's none, because you can see some of them have got a little flat spot on them. They've got wear. But like I say, most of these that I see problems, it's about 50-50. Either the tips of the fingers break off, but you can see now there's circles that go around there. That's actually some of the metal that's been deposited, because as this wears out, it's depositing on this board here. But it'll actually cut these traces. You can see the little trace. There you go. Get the reflection. You can see the traces on there. And what it does is it'll end up cutting them as it's sliding across there. So it doesn't really matter which happens first. Either the fingertip wears out or it cuts through that first. If either happens, the switch is no longer any good. So this one looks good. Now you take it apart. I always lay them down, take it apart, pay attention. Now this one you can only stick in one way. But this one, be careful when you put it back together and how you take it apart, because it is different on both sides. But what I'll do is, you can get these fiberglass brushes in lots of different bristle stiffness. This is a very, very fine, fluffy one. So I use this one for polishing stuff like this. So I'll go over the wafers. You can see how nice that cleans that up. Clean them up. And you can hear there's nothing really abrasive going on there. Not really bad, like I say. But I'll polish up the wafers, so you see how nice and shiny they are there. Once I get them cleaned up, I'll clean it up with some isopropyl alcohol and some foam. Just reach over and grab them. Some, foam swabs. Do the same thing to the actual contact fingers. I'll clean those off and then lubricate it and put it back together, and this thing should last 5 to 10 times longer than it would have. I mean, like I say, I've done some of these, and people have been using them for years, and they're still working. Like I say, that's the main problem, is they were put together dry, and it's just a bad design. This circuit board idea with these little thin fingers, bad idea. But there is a way to greatly extend the life of these things if you do have one of the black bad. So there you go, just a little tip on extending the life of your channel selector switch.